We may be coming off of a bye week, but we're still talking a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Wolfpack, free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. As we mentioned, we are still coming out of a bye week. A lot still to talk about before we dive into the Clemson Tigers joining us this Saturday for homecoming. We're going to fire back up our whole lot of nothing or whole lot of something machine, and we'll get right into it. The first one here. On Monday, Coach Doran says the offense was embarrassed after that Duke loss by a score of 24-3. Whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something. Whole lot of something.
It better be.
and let me tell you why, right? If we looking around the ACC, like let's not look anywhere but the ACC. I don't need to look at all of the college football scoring stats and all that. Let's just look around the ACC alone, right? In terms of who did the most and least, in terms of average score in ACC, Virginia was at the bottom heading into last week in terms of scoring, and I believe they averaged about 22 points per game. Like, that's what we're talking about in terms of it should not be that your defense holds a team to 24 points and you lose by 3 touchdowns. That's insanity. The lowest scoring team after Virginia's performance last week is Wake Forest now, with 23.1 points per game. Who would have thought we'd see that in our lifetime? But anyway, Wake Forest is the lowest scoring team in the conference with 23.1 points per game. So basically, if we allow the lowest scoring teams points per game in a game, we still would have lost by 20 points. They should be embarrassed. They should be. You absolutely should be, because that performance was abysmal. I mean, just, drops everywhere, more drops than Future when he put out 56 Nights, Monster, and Beast Mode back to back to back. It was just a really tough time there. We couldn't block anybody. We couldn't block our way out of a paper bag. And, it was just a disappointing performance overall offensively. So the fact that they're embarrassed by it is good. Don't get embarrassed again.
Yeah, I was reading through some of Coach Doran's Monday comments, and he was talking about some of the guys, including MJ and Dylan McMahon, stepping up as a part of this offense, speaking out, helping guys come to the realization that everyone has got to take a step forward, and that being embarrassed can be used to propel them in this next game against Clemson.
Yeah.
Coach Doran was talking about how he's looking forward to the response. Well, Coach, that makes 2, that makes 3, that makes probably all of Wolfpack Nation there right with you. We're waiting for the response. And I tell you what, it's got to be one heck of a response, because it's Clemson. This is not some get-right team coming into Raleigh this weekend. It will be what has been the crown jewel of the ACC. They're not exactly the Clemson that we've seen these last couple years, but the name still remains. It's Clemson. And they're coming off of a loss as well. So they need a little bit of get-right themselves.
But it doesn't matter who the team is. It's about us. We're not good enough to say it's about the other team at any point in time during this. We're just not that good at this point in time.
This is the perfect time. If we're going to get a good response, it better be on Saturday. So, yes, This is a whole lot of something, or at least it absolutely should be. Number 2 here, we saw him emerge in the Duke game a couple of times, weren't able to connect on any of these throws. Wide receiver Anthony Smith has been working his way into game reps. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something. And, y'all know I don't sing often, but some people wait a lifetime for a moment like this. You know what? Grayson, we're gonna keep bullying these folks. We're gonna keep bullying. And by the way, play the tight ends more because after the game, I said Anthony Smith needs to be running more than go routes. Yes, he's extremely fast and all that good stuff, but if we know that he can run fast without the ball, let's maybe put the ball in his hands and let him run fast that way. Let's try it. It's a novel idea, but maybe a little run after catch. Be good for the guy. That's a guy I think very highly of, and I'm excited to see him get more opportunity. And let's just be honest. I said I was gonna try really hard to not call out individual players, so I'm not gonna do that. Our receiving room has left a lot to be desired. Shout out to Anthony Smith for working his way into the rotation. Shout out to Dorn and company for allowing him into the rotation.
To be completely honest with you, I'm not really sure which direction to go on this one because up until this point, I've seen a lot of folks kind of clamoring for Anthony Smith because he is one of the fastest guys on this team, undeniably so. You saw him bolt past the Duke secondary a couple times, weren't able to get the ball into his hands, but you could easily see that the speed and the skill set is there. But my stance on Anthony, I think he lacks a little bit of the physicality to be overly successful as an ACC wide receiver. And, Doran was talking about on Monday, he had been starting down with the practice squad and slowly working his way up week to week to week until you saw him in this Duke game. So I feel like it has to be a whole lot of something because he could be the guy that provides some sort of spark because this wide receiving room desperately needs one. And you've seen a couple flashes from Julian Gray. You've seen a couple flashes from Terrell Timmons. I don't know. I think I might remain on the fence here. Sorry, that's a lame answer, but one way or another, change is good, especially from what we've seen. And Anthony Smith, he could be a portion of this change. Clemson has not entered a game with NC State with a losing conference record since 2010 and 2011. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
It's a whole lot of something because this is not the same Tiger team in a lot of respects. This is not the same Clemson team that we saw in terms of there were plenty of Clemson teams where they were world beaters. They were national champions. They were all the things. That last team that came in with that type of record, that last team finished the season 6-7. This is a team that we could very easily win this game, but we could also very easily lose this game. So I'm going to need no slacking, no playing around, no messing around here. This is a very, very different Clemson team that we've seen in the past decade or so. And so we need to take advantage of that.
I'm going to go with a whole lot of nothing on this one because I think to a certain extent, this game feels like a game where you throw out the record books. Clemson's having an up and down year. Of course, we've talked about it all season. NC State is having an up and down year. I love the fact that this game is at home. I think if this game was in Clemson, it has potential to get ugly. But this is such a show me game for NC State. We've said this plenty of times already this season. But coming out of a bye week, you're laying down on the mat. We're desperately wondering if they're going to get up off of the mat. And despite Clemson's struggles this year, it's still Clemson. It just feels like all records don't necessarily matter. It feels a lot more up in the air than some would probably believe as well. I think Clemson is very beatable, maybe even more beatable than they have felt these last couple of years. But again, it's going to come down to NC State versus NC State as it often has this year. Up next, we're going to talk about the number one thing we want to see out of each position group coming out of the bye week. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Add your job and use the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Then use simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, jumping back into some post-bye week analysis here. We're going to be talking about the #1 thing we want to see out of each position group coming out of this bye week. We'll start, of course, at the quarterback position. Kenton, I'll let you go first. What is the #1 thing you want to see from MJ Morris?
Just better body language. Just better body language in terms of when things aren't going your way, when the calls don't go your way. Again, he's getting it. He's getting it. Because I remember last year it was you're not going to win every game. This year it's winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. We're getting where we need to be. We're getting where the next step for him is, hey, a receiver drops a pass. Hey, it's all right, brother. We got you. I'm coming right back to you. I'm coming right back to you. Keep running as hard as you can. Get open. And I'm going to get that ball to you, big dog. You know, that type. Because the actual play on the field, again, other than like 2-3 passes where I'd say he was forcing it against Duke, I think it was a spectacular game by him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think MJ himself has been fine, but my answer kind of goes hand in hand with yours, and that's leadership. And, that does touch into that Duke game where we did see moments of some bad body language, but some of the things that we saw out of MJ last year in his freshman season is he was kind of poised and mature beyond his years.
Yeah.
And so we know that he possesses that leadership inside of him. And so it's going to be super important with all the struggles we've had this year going into these final 5 games, whether they turn out good or bad. He needs to be the guy, the voice above the other voices saying, look, I'm the leader of this football team. If I go, we go. Now let's go. Up next, we have running backs. What's the #1 thing you want to see from the running backs?
I want to say some truly explosive plays. I want to see, what's our longest run of the year?
It might be Michael Allen for 37. I'll look though.
But that was against who? Marshall. I want to see against an FBS, or not an FBS, a Power 5 opponent. I want to see against a conference opponent. I want to see something truly explosive out of our backfield.
Mine is very specific, and it's a theme that we were on the first couple weeks. Michael Allen touches. More Michael Allen touches. We were getting it for a couple weeks there, and then at Duke, we tapered off. I think he only had, 5 in total? Yeah. And I need to see more touches from Michael Allen. With the explosive playmaking ability that he does have, it makes all the sense in the world to try and get him the ball as often as we can. Offensive line. #1 thing you want to see from the offensive line out of the bye week.
Get your pad level down, fire off the ball, and move people in the running game. Even if I'm not even mad if this offensive line doesn't create a ton of knockback and reestablish the line of scrimmage. Open up holes. Y'all have the type of backs that if you open up these holes, they'll be all right. They'll be all right. But that's the charge that I would give to the O-line.
Mine is adjustments. We saw in the latest installment of the depth chart that came out on Monday, we do have a couple major changes. Redshirt freshman Jacarius Peak will be moving over to right tackle, taking over the starting duties there. He has been, up until this point, playing behind Anthony Belton at left tackle, so he will make the shift to the other side of the line. And then redshirt junior Timothy McKay moves over to right guard. He has been starting at right tackle, but he will now take over the duties at right guard for Derek Eason. So my answer for the O-line is adjustments. We're now seeing some adjustments being made with this coaching staff. Now we need to see the subsequent results from these changes. And do I expect everything to be solved with these 2 moves against Clemson? No, absolutely not. But we need to start seeing progression here for these last 5 games. If it doesn't happen against Clemson, I'll bite my tongue and I can live with it, but I want to see progression from here on out. If we get just a little bit better in each of these next 5 games, that is getting somewhere. For what we've seen so far, we've been getting nowhere. So we need to start getting somewhere. So my answer is adjustments. And then I'll couple these together wide receivers, and tight ends. Number one thing you need to see.
For the tight ends, I need more appearances and touches. I need them. I know that they can't control this, but I need to see them more involved. And for the receivers, catch the damn ball. If it touches both of your hands, come down with it. All of you. That includes Casey. All of you. That includes Keon Lassane. All of you. That includes Rosner. All of you. That includes Anthony Smith. I don't care who you are, how much you've been playing. Dakari Collins, you name it. If you Porter Rooks, if you've been listed as a receiver, Julian Gray, if you've been listed as a receiver on this team, catch the darn ball.
I'll start with tight ends first before I get into wide receivers. Tight ends for me is physicality. And of course, that will be coming with more appearances, we hope. But physicality, we've talked all season about the tight ends potentially being a key to unlocking a lot of the struggles we've been having on off. Whether it's in run block, whether it's getting downfield and catching a pass, we simply need a whole lot more physicality in this offense because it has been severely lacking through 7 games. And this tight end room, we hope, can be a sufficient answer to a lot of the questions we've been having on offense. And then, no surprise here with the wide receivers, but my one thing is consistency. It's making the easy play before you can make the hard play. And that's some of what Coach Dorn was talking about in his Monday availability. They sort of just try to go back to the basics in this time off. They need to be able to make the easy play every single time because that is a lot of what's been plaguing us. We have got to be more consistent because we've been seeing it kill us in these games, absolutely kill us. And we cannot get anything established offensively for the rest of the year if we continue the inconsistency that we've seen from the wide receiving group. In just a minute, we're going to be touching on the number one thing we want to see out of all the defensive groups after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is simply the most fun you can have this fantasy football season. PrizePicks is super simple to play, and you can make your picks and submit your entry in under 60 seconds. With quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types to choose from, PrizePicks is the number one daily fantasy sports app. This Thursday night, you can take Mike Evans to have more than 90 reception yards, or you can take Josh Allen to throw less than 2 touchdowns. And with the PrizePicks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if your player gets injured. For NFL games and top 25 college football matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, rounding out this Tuesday episode with the number one thing we want to see from the defensive groups coming out of the bye week. Again, we'll start up front, Kenton. The defensive line, number one thing you want to see.
Properly adjusting to unbalance. Clemson runs unbalanced on a regular basis. They ran it against Miami multiple times. I can guarantee you, as sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, there will be some unbalanced formation against this. I am hand on the Bible. If they don't run it one time, I promise you, I will never, ever, ever in my life say anything about Tony Gibson and the lack of adjustments again if they don't run unbalanced one time this game.
Yeah, mine is more or less the same, but it's gap discipline. And we talked about how good of a job they did against Louisville and Jawar Jordan, and even with Rasheen Ali from Marshall, who's a talent there, to see them get beat with that unbalanced set against Duke after we had already seen it earlier in the season against Notre Dame. The explosive plays that result out of bad gap discipline is pivotal. And so, again, you just mentioned Clemson. Will Shipley, who we're very familiar with, you cannot allow Shipley to beat you in this game. You need to be putting the ball into the hands of Cade Klubnik and say, all right, Klubnik, you're going to have to beat us today because we will not allow y'all to do it on the ground.
Klubnik going to put the ball in his hands anyway. It don't matter what the play is. He's going to put the ball in his hands. Speaking of Shipley, you know what I mean? come on home. Come play with the better quarterback between the two in this game.
Did you see in Coach Dorn's availability today? He slid in. He thinks the world of Will Shipley. I see. It's chess. It ain't checkers. It is chess, though.
Let me tell you something. I'm from the Jim Halpern school of dirty macking, baby. If you got to dirty mac a little bit, you do what you got to do. You do it. All's fair and what? Love and war. Love and war. You know what recruiting is? You get them to love you. Go ahead, Dirty Mac Dave. Dirty Mac him up, Dave. Do what you got to do, player. Dirty Mac him up. Dirty Mac him up. You know what I mean? Stay within the legal limits, of course. We don't want the – because, you know, the NCAA is waiting. They waiting to snatch us up. Stay within the legal limits, but Dirty Mac him up, Dave.
All right. Next group here, the linebackers. Number one thing you need to see from the linebacking core.
Guys not named Peyton show up and show up big time. Or actually, I guess it would just be the Mike linebacker. But you know what? No, I'm going to leave Jalen Scott in there. Guys not named Peyton show up and show up big time. We need, in the words of Robert and I, be relevant when your number's called. All of you. Be relevant when your number's called. We know what we're going to get from Peyton. That man is setting the example. He's setting the standard. Go follow him. Go follow.
Yeah, mine is the emergence of the Mike linebacker. Kind of the same thing here. We've seen what Peyton Wilson could do. I've been impressed lately with Jalen Scott for the most part. I think he's been coming on strong. Whether it becomes Devon Betty or it becomes Caden Fordham, you have got to find more consistency out of that Mike linebacker position. Because again, this defense, we've seen what they can do. And I'm still holding that Louisville game as like the crown jewel as the defensive performance this year, despite losing that game. Because if you can find a way to replicate that effort, you can compete in any of these last 5 games here.
And we should win any of the last 5. If we give up 13 again, if we give up 13 points in any of these 5 games, that should be a win. We should be able to mark that down, put a W on that thing.
And then last, I'll group them all together here. The secondary as a whole. What is the number one thing you need to see from the secondary?
Continued improvement. Continued improvement. The secondary has gotten better and better game by game, really.
I agree.
And with that being said, with them getting better game by game, just keep getting better. Just keep getting better. Don't worry about everybody else. Don't worry about the outside noise. Just keep getting better, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, you know, I really don't have I don't have much constructive criticism here, but it's continuing to make big plays. We had one to a certain degree at the beginning of the Duke game, as that pick from Shaheem Battle was the only play that resulted in some points for us. But the amount of turnovers that we have been able to generate through the first half of the season was pretty solid. I wouldn't say it was necessarily great, but I would say it was very good. That trend needs to continue. And so we're going to be looking for the secondary to be making a lot of these plays through these final 5 games. So for me, for the secondary, it's continuing to make huge game-changing plays. That will do it for us here on this Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in with us, dropping a like, dropping a comment, mashing that subscribe button. We're getting awfully close to 800 subscribers, so make sure you tell a friend to hit that subscribe button on our climb to 800 and beyond. Of course, as always, get your comments in the comment. A lot of good ones yesterday on our Monday episode. Enjoy responding to each and every one of those. We will see you all tomorrow. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.